Hey guys, Broker Brett here with Thoennessen with Ericson Insurance Advisors, and then Risk Revu, one of my favorite types of entrepreneurs, building a business out of his current business to kind of scratch his own itch. And we actually did one of these a year ago. So Kurt, what's going on? How's Risk Revu? How's the past year treated you?
Hey Brett, past year has treated me well, despite all this interesting stuff with COVID-19. The business is growing, and Risk Revu is growing, and that's exciting. So there's a lot going on. It's a very dynamic environment. So thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, we were just commenting before we hit record how can't believe it's only been a year. I feel like in InsurTech and startups, I always say it should be like dog years. It's like 1 year equals 7, with all ups, downs, But yeah, man, no, a year already. And last time we talked, you kind of were just getting out there, and there's definitely families going through a lot. It's not an easy time for people financially and everything else. But for startups, I would think this was almost like Risk Revu works really well, for something like this. And I don't know.
So there's a lot of interesting dynamics hitting us as Risk Revu today, and certainly there's the positive side, which is remote working. A lot more brokers are doing remote working, and they're not able to meet with customers face to face, and so they're looking for solutions to help support them in that endeavor. And so Risk Revu is perfect for that. And the flip side is that the economy's hurting, and so investments down on certain types of things. But we're doing a lot more marketing and advertising these days. We have a weekly webcast that we do on Fridays at noon. Where we do some education, we do a quick demo, and we found that consistent education and consistent awareness has brought some new people into the fold, and so it helps us as grow through this. And that I don't think those would have happened if we didn't have this kind of 3 or 4 month change in work environment. So that's been an interesting addition.
100%. I've had a lot of national networking things that we've done that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Your brain kind of hits a different gear when you become a lot less location based. And just for background, Risk Revu does really cool forms, super slick. It allows it to white label for agents and agencies. So that way, instead of, a messy piece of notebook paper that you're trying to remember what you need to write down on, you ping a really professional link out, and people can get back the data you need to start working on a client. So.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the things, I've been a broker since 2006, focused on the high net worth personal line space. And, 5 years ago, after doing it for that many years, I started to think there's one thing that I really need to get away from, because it's not a revenue generating task. It's a low skill task, and that was data gathering. Anybody can ask somebody what their date of birth is, what their address is, what their name is, and go through the list of so many questions to put together a proposal. So my time needed to be spent on higher value tasks, and I said, okay, we got to figure out how to make this data gathering process better, and that's where Risk Revu came from.
100%, because so much what we do is that relationship build, is that that back and forth, and just understand the person you're helping protect. So kind of getting that task sort of minutia out of the way is really cool, and I think a great prospect.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, the relationship piece, I used to think that phone call of data gathering helped make the relationship better, but I don't think it really does. I don't think it either adds or subtracts to it. The only thing it does is it takes my energy and the client's energy. Versus just giving them a form and they can fill it out in 5 minutes with the basic data that I need as the advisor to analyze. So I think that the process of giving the power to the client to give us that information in an easy, convenient way makes the relationship better.
Oh yeah, no, it can be teeth pulling sometimes, trying to, get information out of people. And the other part of it is a two-way street a little bit. And don't get me wrong, we're privileged to work with clients, anybody trusting us with their money and their risk is huge. It's a big compliment, but you need a little bit of feedback too. I think the right people get it. It's not a big ask, to get 10 to 15 lines.
No, and I think today more than ever, and even the last 10 to 15 years,
Yeah.
the willingness of people in general to go online and start a process online
Mm-hmm.
is much greater.
Oh
It's
yeah.
just the millennials are used to that process, so that's a native thing for them. And then other generations are picking up with it too. So it's now is the time to take advantage of this type of solution, in my opinion.
I wonder if it's almost flipped to where you'd be thrown off if somebody like gave you a nice form and like a nice pen and was like, "Hey, please fill this out for me while we're sitting here today." You know?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think it's really viewed as an old school way to do business,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
for the millennials and for the younger generations who are used to that online experience for that type of activity, handing them something to fill out with a pen is, or to do it over the phone or to do it in person is viewed not as well.
Yeah, and I think for me, I always thought it was kind of like an income thing where like if you're kind of low and the needs aren't high, you might kind of automate it, but you go up, you expect higher touch. But I even think further up the food chain. I know you work with a lot of high net worth people. They want the ease and the convenience and the workflow.
Mm,
So
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Seems like it
Great
works
point.
across the board.
It's an exact. That's a great point, and I think a lot of people think the same thing. But I think my customer base, the high net worth customer base, the affluent, is looking for that convenient service just like
Mm-hmm.
anybody else. And this is offering a convenience. It's offering a time savings. I have an example from one of our Risk Revu users who said, I had a prospect who was a surgeon. And they called the surgeon once and they said, "Hey, do you have time to give me the information I need for a proposal?" The surgeon said, "No, I'm going into surgery.
Yeah.
Can you just send me a form?" And then, the user sent the form and the surgeon filled it out at like 2 a.m. in the morning,
That's cool.
when he had time to do it. So, I think it doesn't matter how wealthy you are. And if you're super wealthy, maybe someone else fills out the form for you.
Yeah.
But it's really just about offering that convenience and customer experience.
And I've used it, and I'm not the most, I'll call it proactive agent right now. Right now, I'm helping out at a benefits agency doing the PNC, but every so often I'll have these needs come up. At least once, twice, 3 times a month, I'll ping those forms out, get them back, and it's nice. It gives you something to run with, a good starting point. So,
Absolutely, and
yeah.
I think there's a lot of lines of business too that we operate in and that we sell as producers and agencies, and it's very difficult to know all the questions to ask for every single line of business. Like one day I'm selling high value homeowners, the next day I'm selling yacht insurance, the next day aircraft, and so maybe domestic workers comp or whatever. So sometimes you forget the questions that you really need to ask. The form doesn't forget. The form has it all built out with conditional logic such that it's going to gather all that information you need without having to remember. So it just makes it much less stressful.
Kind of reminds me of the book, The Checklist Manifesto, which was about aviation and kind of like checklists being used all over the place. But yeah, that's really cool, especially as a guy who's a little bit of a generalist who has a few different lines in the water. I appreciate having a resource like that to fall back on and have at least like an educated start.
It's a great analogy. And, like pilots, they have their checklist. Advisors, risk advisors, we need our checklist too. We need to know what tools to use in what situation. And that's what this is. When I have a new prospect in and says, "Hey, I want to buy home, auto, umbrella, valuable articles, and I have a second home," I know exactly the form to send to them, and I send that directly to them. So it's knowing the right tool to use for the right situation.
No, 100%. And if you don't mind me asking, and feel free to kind of make a general number of it, but how many approximate users, or have you maybe doubled or tripled in clients?
Yeah, so we've been in business for about 2 years, and now we have about 150 users on the platform.
Yeah.
Growing. So as I said, the webinars we're doing on a weekly basis are really helping get the word out. And one of the most exciting things about that community is that there's a lot of collaboration going on.
That's really cool.
So we have users like you in California, Florida, Oklahoma, Tennessee, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts, New York. And so depending on where they are, they might have different information needs. And so, the New Hampshire, the Massachusetts folks will say, "Hey, we need this question in this new car dealership form."
Yeah.
So they send that into us. We'll make an update to the form. In most cases, we'll do an internal review. But in most cases, we'll end up incorporating their suggestion and additional information needs into the form.
So do you end up doing it? You mentioned the smart logic in there, but do you treat a California auto quote different than you might a Massachusetts auto quote, or pretty similar across the board for now and later might toggle a little?
It's very similar across the board, but for example, for the, like if it's a Massachusetts um, auto policy for a vehicle,
Mm-hmm.
then based on the registration state, there might be a few additional questions that come up, like what's the odometer reading, or you have a copy of the RMV1 form that you can upload. If it's New York, it'll make sure it asks for the middle initial
Oh, wow.
on the driver's license, so that we can make sure that the ID card is correct. So so there is all kinds of different
That's cool.
logic built into it,
I
based
gotta
on the
start.
state, based on
Yeah.
all kinds of different things.
No, that's sweet. I ended up licensed everywhere from helping Fineo. So far it's just been some commercial stuff out of California, but I'll have to keep that in mind and make sure I'm using risk review forms I'm writing in states I'm less familiar with,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that in tandem to plug one other buddy, Bob Frady in Hazard Hub, it's like 75 cents a property report. So when I'm in like a weird state, I think I'm also going to be using Hazard Hub to pull the property data to make sure.
Hazard Hub's awesome.
Yeah.
They're a free home risk tool multiple times, and they have that risk management tool now that's really neat too.
Yeah, I'll mention those guys in the notes too. Just, I don't know, between your forums, between their tools, you can confidently go across state lines. And it's kind of crazy, it may not have mattered as much 4 months ago, but I feel like the world literally is a little bit different now. And, there's less of that in-person
and
expectation.
I really, I think the bringing up Hazard Hub is a great point, because you're getting, today we have as advisors and brokers, we have tools that were never available to us before, that are enabling us to be risk managers more than just either data gatherers or data finders or whatever. With Hazard Hub, you can find out, if someone's in a high risk flood area, or if they're in a wildfire zone, or if they're in an earthquake zone, in a few minutes. And with Risk Revu, you can gather all the data you need to get the information and then analyze it, so that you're not wasting your energy trying to find all this information. You're using your energy then to put together a solution for the client.
Yeah, no, paint a full picture. And the other cool thing, even if it's like a lower risk flood or lower risk wildfire, those policies are going to be super cheap anyway. So like finding out if it may make sense to tack something on to $1 million home for $800 a year, that would be a huge help. Not even, a lot cheaper than that typically. So,
right. Yeah, and some, there's some other tools out there too, like valchoice.com is a great one for doing carrier rating. That helps consumers really understand from the insurance department's point of view what the customer complaints are. And another one is Wonder, WONEEUR.ai, and they're aggregating data about fine art.
Cool, crazy.
To give advisors, that information they need to help clients assess the values of their artwork. So there's just so many really valuable tools that are available today that are helping us as agents be better advisors.
Well, even just small stuff like Zoom, DocuSign, all that are just making it so easy. And it's crazy how this past couple months have forced everybody to kind of adopt those tools, and everyone's been fine. I've picked up one physical check since like COVID kind of started. Other than that, everything's been remote, and I haven't really missed a beat. I've definitely leaned more towards the startup side right now. It's a little easier than chasing down traditional business, conversations. One thing I've been kind of hitting on lately with podcasts and stuff is just sales too, because I know it's a little bit of a lean time. I don't know about building your practice, if there's anything you took for granted or thought when you started out that 5-10 years later you're thinking about totally differently. But I don't know if there's anything in your day-to-day lately that's changed, or you've kind of sharpened your sword in any interesting ways recently.
You mean as a broker or as Risk Revu?
I would say as a broker a little bit, just kind of curious on the classic kind of business development side a little bit.
Yeah, so as a broker, the business, it's interesting because, in the high net worth space, we have not seen as much of a downturn. Clients are continuing to buy homes, they're buying fine art, they're buying valuables, boats, so on and so forth. So we continue to see a lot of activity in that space. And I think my philosophy has always been services sales. And the more you service your client and the better relationship you have with them, the the more business that you're going to get in terms of client referrals and introductions and so on. So, it's one of the things we just introduced on the agency side is a NPS scoring model.
Oh, interesting. Cool.
So that we can automate the surveying of our customers. So every day we have a survey that goes out to our customers based on the activities that happened the day before.
Okay.
And we get this amazing feedback from our clients, and it's mostly tens, which is amazing. And that is something that just shows the business was built on the right principles, doing the right things, and because of that, the client referrals and the introductions can continue to happen.
And I didn't even mean to kind of like dovetail this together, but I think the digital should be an extension of the analog. The digital should be highlighting and illuminating the fundamentals, but it all comes back to person-to-person relationships, taking care of the details, doing a little extra, making sure people feel heard and cared for, so it's interesting, even as we have all these tools to make our jobs lighter and easier, it comes back to taking care of people better and better as all the other data is taken care of. That's cool.
Right. Well, we don't have time to do that if we're stuck in the minutia. So it was really about just freeing people up, at the account executive side, at the producer side, the internal operations, whatever it is, we need to automate that data collection to free us up to do those higher value tasks that are really going to make an impact with the client.
I always joke that eventually down the line, we're just going to be like marketing reps. The data is going to be collected somewhat automatically. A product might be somewhat chosen to a degree automatically or automated, but we're going to be out there telling the merits of what you need and why, and what risk is out there. I don't see that going away anytime soon.
Comfortable and what happens naturally, and what I'm seeing as well, when I'm not focused on just chasing information, I'm able to upsell and cross-sell because I have more time to explain the coverage and to talk about it intelligently with my clients. Cyber is the big one these days. Equipment breakdown coverage is a big one. Cross-selling additional lines and umbrella insurance is always big, but excess flood is huge. As far as just keeping up to date with that and saying, okay, we got a primary flood policy here in a high-risk flood zone, but no excess flood. I have now time to focus on that, get a quote for you, and then share that with you and explain to you why you need this amount of coverage. And then at renewal too, making sure that gets updated.
That's cool. And did I hear a little bit of commercial conversation there too? Sometimes does your high net worth lend itself over to helping out with their businesses too?
Yes. Yeah. So there's a lot of private equity firms, family offices.
Oh, wow.
Consulting firms, and manufacturing and retail, and they own businesses and invest in businesses just like anybody else. So yes, there are
cool
cross-sale opportunities there
that
arise.
So it makes sense. So you built your name in one channel, high net worth, like specific, like I'm going to know this inside and out. When you do get in those other opportunities, is a little bit of like a co-selling situation, or?
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, so my specialty is high net worth personal lines, and that's where I focus all my time and energy. And then I have partners that I work with on the commercial side. And so if I have a client that needs, a business policy or business program, then I'll connect them with my colleague on the commercial side.
Yeah, for your own, I don't want to say entertainment, but do you enjoy kind of peeking at the different lines? And like when you do have a personal lines client that has all the commercial kind of, you almost can't help but get into the other paperwork and just take a look at it, see what they're working on, and explore.
There's always going to be crossovers. There's always, when you start an account with the high net worth side of it and you're brought into the commercial side, the client is always going to look to you for certain things, whether it's coverage information or whether it's just a shoulder to cry on.
Yeah.
You're always going to get pulled into that. So, very often I have to be aware of both in those situations. And, I'm fortunate to work with an amazing team, so they keep me up to date on that kind of stuff.
So almost like an account manager, and they're almost like, to a degree, it's interesting. Yeah, no, that's cool. And I can see that because business to consumer always feels so much more emotional, and like insuring a person's stuff, insuring their life to a degree. As opposed to business is a little bit dry, a little bit more sterile, a little bit more direct.
It is very different. And, the focus and attention that is given to the personal lines versus commercial, it's different, and, to tie it back to risk review, I mean, I have forms for both, and we have a business risk analysis, which is kind of like a business renewal questionnaire. We have a cyber form, and in other forms to make that relationship easier and more streamlined. But it's there's a lot of things that we as brokers can do to help our clients,
Oh, totally.
get through all this minutia and prepare for disaster.
So I've gotten that bot form out a few times. That's helped me get started on a couple deals. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great form for the BOPs and for the simple ones that you just want to gather some quick information.
That's where I'm kind of living right now. I appreciate it. But yeah, no, Kurt, I appreciate coming on for the update. It's awesome to hear you have plenty of clients running through the system. I can vouch for winning business through, deals I've started with Risk Revu and gathering that information.
That's great.
But yeah, man, I look forward to the follow-up in a year and we'll 10X it again, be that much bigger. Cool. Have a great afternoon.
Okay. Thanks, Brett.
Thanks,
awesome.
guys.